So we've just talked about a lot of different aspects of culture, leadership strategy. If I'm a board member who comes in 5 times a year to sit down and talk about primarily business strategy, because that is one of my fiduciary duties as a board member, how do I get my arms around a company's culture?
Well, I mean, I think that first and foremost, the directors that we all talk to, we're almost universal in saying the first thing you got to do is get out of the boardroom, right? And I think that's a piece of it, recognizing that if the company is stage managing those interactions, those field trips, you're only going to see a part of the picture. I think the other thing companies or directors have to look for is sources of third-party validation. You know, how do you know what you're seeing from management, whether it's in the formal boardroom setting or site visits, or town halls or whatever? How do you know you're really seeing what's going on? And with technology, there are so many more sources now than what there used to be able to do that.
One thing I think boards have to do is also recognize that you're never actually going to get your head fully around the culture of the organization, especially in today's environment where things are moving at a faster pace. So if everything is moving at a faster pace, your culture is also evolving at a faster pace. To say that you need to get your head fully around the culture of the organization is almost setting the board up for failure. It's more about, I think, making a point to asking the probing questions as to, okay, you've defined this mission statement, this value statement. Now, how does that actually permeate through the organization? Asking the management team to provide the board that particular blueprint, and then taking that blueprint and then determining at the board level whether that blueprint aligns with the strategy of the organization. And where the board can be very effective is zeroing in on those gaps. And so testing those gaps against getting out of the boardroom and going to those trade shows, those investor conferences, those store locations and things like that, and testing whether or not there is that appropriate alignment.
I think it's a really good point, is that you can't really get your hands around it as a board member, but if you can understand it enough and then map that back to the business strategy and make sure they're aligned, or if there are gaps where we need to fill holes, that's the way to go about it.
And then that actually made me think of it. The last aspect of it, which I didn't mention before, is then holding management accountable for addressing those gaps, because the board's not going to be able to address those gaps. The board's going to report back to management, this is what we see, and these are where we have identified the particular gaps, and then having management be held accountable in terms of proving then to the board that those gaps have been filled. Because what you don't want to deviate from is this trusting relationship that the board has with the management. Is that it's not that the board needs full oversight over the cultural development of the organization, but more that they need to just make sure that they're holding the management accountable for the culture of the organization, its support of the business strategy, just as they're holding management accountable for the audit function, for the governance function.